Well, it's that time again for Ask Anything. Brian, I've got a question from one of our viewers. Here it says, we make mistakes every single day. We can agree with that, right, Brian? But how do we know that God forgives us every time we ask?
Oh my. That's a great question, but it's also very timely as well because in this self quarantine, I'm sure we make even more mistakes than we'd like to admit. But the reason why we know that God forgives us is because He tells us so. It says something, and it's powerful when you look at God would rather be on talking terms with us than to be mad at us. So He gave us a tool to have that relationship. He says this in 1 John chapter 1, 8, and 9. He says, and this is so important, make sure that you write this down. If we say that we have no sin, we deceive ourselves and the truth is not in us. But if we confess our sin, watch this, He is faithful and just to forgive us of our sin and also to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. So it's not really a sin issue we have, but it's a righteousness issue. So we have to be in right standing with God. And when we're in right standing, we can believe that all things will work together for our good, Lorie. All right.
That's good, Brian. So good. We have a faithful God who forgives us. I love it.
Amen. And we've got a question for you, Ms. Hartshorn. And this is from one of our faithful viewers. And what happens if you make a vow to God and later break that vow?
Well, that's a good question, too. And certainly you see in the Bible, especially in the Old Testament, people making vows all the time, And so I think it's always good when we ask a question to look at what would Jesus say? So I'm going to take you to Matthew 5 in the Sermon on the Mount, verses 33 to 37. Here's what Jesus said. Again, you have heard that it was said to the people long ago, do not break your oath, but fulfill to the Lord the vows you have made. But I tell you, do not swear an oath at all, either by heaven, for it is God's throne, or by the earth, for it is His footstool. And in verse 37, all you need to say is simply yes or no. Anything beyond this comes from the evil one. Jesus gets straight to the point, doesn't he, Brian, on this to say, really, let your yes be yes and your no be no. Don't get involved in making vows. And I think because Jesus knows us better than we know ourselves, we're likely to break a vow. And then we're a liar when we say we're going to do something and we don't do it. But here's the wonderful truth. Maybe you've made a vow. Maybe it's a marriage vow to God and you broke it. Just like Brian reminded us, call it sin, and God will forgive all sin, even the sin of breaking a vow. But we must confess it as sin and then receive God's forgiveness and then move forward and be careful not to make vows. Just let your yes be yes and your no be no. Hopefully that's helped for you today.
Absolutely. Wonderful response. Hey, and we'll be right back.